Hey, previously we got JavaScript to load in this web application. Now the next goal is to change up this JavaScript to also use React. To begin, we're going to need to install React and the React DOM module into the project. Head to the command line, run npm I, and then React, as if this course is at version 16.6.0. The React DOM module is also at the same version, so 16.6.0, and then add the -- save flag to make sure this saves as a dependency in the project. Cool. So as that's going, go ahead and open up the project in your code editor. And now in the client/index.js file, we can import the React library from the React module. Now in the land of frontend, the syntax for requiring code is a little different. We're going to use the import keyword to import the React module from its location at the React node module folder. So in Node.js, recall that we use the require keyword, which is part of a system called the CommonJS project. However, the 2015 version of JavaScript called ES6 added support for loading content through an import syntax. So in other words, like this, you import foo from foo when the module is called foo, but in this case, we're importing React and also capitalizing it from the React module. Okay, next we're going to import the render function from the React DOM library. However, render is not the default export of React DOM, therefore we're going to use curly braces to import the render function. This render function is the key to inserting React into the front end. So it allows us to dynamically insert React components into the HTML document. Let's get rid of the console log and instead have a render call. This render function takes two arguments. First, we have some React code to insert. So let's have a pair of div tags for React code. And let's call this crypto chain in React. An exclamation point because this is extra exciting. So this suspiciously looks a lot like HTML, but it's crucial to recognize that this markup is not actually HTML. After all, this code is in a JavaScript file. The markup you're seeing here is called JSX, short for JavaScript XML-like syntax. So XML is a similar markup language to HTML that uses less than signs and greater than signs to create sections of the markup. This JavaScript that looks exactly like HTML and XML is called JSX, therefore. So with our JSX in the render method, we can now, so in this case, the JSX in here is what is used to structure the React presentation. In other words, the structure of React components. Now we get to the second argument of the render method, and in here we're going to specify where in the document we want to insert this HTML. So to work with the document, we have the document object that the browser provides. And this gives us a convenient getElementById method. Cool. So this document object is especially powerful. It tracks what is currently in the HTML in the web application. And this getElementById method allows us to deep dive into the document and find an element according to an ID attribute. So thanks to React's online documentation, the most frequently used React element in the getElementId case is called root. So we're going to use that as well to keep up with the convention. Okay, so overall we have our render method. Now it's rather long on one line, so let's place both arguments on their own individual line to make this look more readable. All right, that's perfect. Now all that's missing is the actual element with the ID of root in the HTML. Head to index.html and let's change this root overall div. Instead of saying welcome to the crypto chain, we're going to make it an empty div, but it will have the ID attribute that says root. And notice that it's a convention in HTML to have attribute values surrounded by double quotes. Okay, now in the command line, once you have all those changes, we can run the application with the npm run dev command. Cool. So hopefully this is working, but we may or may not get an error. Go ahead and open up your browser now. And once you have localhost 3000 loaded, or if you already have it loaded, give it a refresh. And now this time nothing appears. So if you inspect the element, and you go to the console, you're going to find unexpected identifier, uncaught syntax error on the first line of our index.js file. So if you click on index.js, well, it seems like the culprit is this first import React from React line. The browser is essentially saying that at this time, the import statement is unexpected. Essentially, this error is explaining that the browser currently doesn't have access to the React library code in the node modules directory of the backend. So it can't import React from React, well, if the React code isn't available. Now, it would be a huge and messy undertaking to try and include all of React's code in our front-end directory and try serving that. So, to solve this problem, we take advantage of bundlers, which we spoke about in the React.js overview. Bundlers package all the code from required and imported libraries, along with your own application code, into one overall file. This has the advantage of creating an optimized file that only needs to be loaded once on the browser in order to run your complete application. Plus, bundlers are great since most are equipped to support the addition of other features such as transpilation, which allow us to use newer versions of JavaScript syntax, since the transpiler can translate the fancy JavaScript code into a more universal and older version of JavaScript that all browsers are equipped to support. Okay, let's install a bundler now on the command line. So head to your command line application. Go ahead and kill the running application because we're going to need to install some new modules. This module is called Parcel Bundler. So add npm i parcel bundler, and in this project it's at version 1.10.3, and add the save flag. All right. With Parcel Bundler installed, we can now configure build client commands in the application. So let's create a build client command within the root package.json file of the overall project. So in package.json, we'll go ahead and check that parcel has been installed. And I might have opened this a little too early, but now that I reopened it, certainly Parcel Bundler is a dependency. So just that first time, Parcel Bundler was still installing in the background, for me at least. But now we have this script section, and we're going to add a new command that says build client. In order to interact with Parcel Bundler, it actually exposes us a command called parcel. So you don't need to add Parcel Bundler. The overall command is by itself parcel. This itself has its own build argument, and this takes two arguments itself. First, the root of where we want to build the project, and that is the index.html file. So that is the source of our overall application. But then we have the result of where parcel should build the output, and that is specified through an out_dir option. So --out_dir. And the result is, well, let's place this in a client/dist directory, which is short for distribution and is a conventional name for serving built code in web applications. Cool. Now, to make our setup a tad cleaner though, let's add a new source directory to the client, which is gonna hold all of our custom source application code. This is gonna allow us to easily distinguish the source directory from the build dist directory. So the new source is client source index.html, and the out_dir is still client/dist. Okay, so once you have that change, let's be sure to make the source directory of the client. So let's have a source folder, and let's place both the index.html and the index.js file within source. Nice. Now this does require us to make a couple updates within the main index.js file, because recall before that we're serving all the code from the client directory. So this does mean that we need to acknowledge that in our static references. So first up, notice that we're having this express static code to serve up all the files within the client directory. Well, now we want to serve up all the files that end up in the dist built directory. So that client/dist. This applies to the line where we're sending the file of the index.html file. So down below at app.get*, we want to serve the client dist index.html file that is going to be created by parcel for us. Okay, once you have all these changes down, we should be able to build the front end with React. So head to the command line once you have everything, and then fire npm run build-client. And as that is going, notice that parcel does its job and it takes in all the code. So that might have flashed a little quickly, but you'll notice that it got all the code from the necessary dependencies. You saw things like React development.js, but eventually it also gets to our source application code and it makes this huge .js file. So before we actually visit the application and start over by running npm run dev, let's check out the contents of the new dist directory. So if you look at dist, it has an index.html, and this is definitely a minified and bundled code. Everything is now in one line. Someone definitely didn't write this unless you actually wrote this on one line. But yeah, you see parcel does its job of making the minified, or rather the minimum version necessary to get something running on the browser. It then automatically creates this version through this little hash over there, and source.hash.js is this completely, it looks like a gobble mess of code over here, but really this is great because it includes all the necessary modules that we have in order to get our code going. For example, one thing that you can do is search for crypto chain in React, and it's probably going to be near the end, but there is our custom source application code. Here we're creating an element of div whose text says crypto chain in React. And if you scroll up, you're going to see a lot of things related to a package name because that is the source of the module that has been bundled into this one overall file to be served on the browser. Last up, there's also this .map folder, and this is more a helper file for the browser in order to identify sources in the bundled JavaScript code where functionality is located. So it has things like line names, and it's all packaged for the browser environment in order to essentially parse this bundled JavaScript code. Okay, so with that covered, let's head back to the command line and then check out our new application. So fire npm run dev, then it's listening on localhost 3000. So let's visit our application on the browser at localhost 3000, give it a refresh, and this time we see crypto chain in React. Cool. So this is awesome. Our front end is now loading React code. And with that, we can now focus on actually building the components that are going to visualize the blockchain currently contained in this overall application and system.